All right, welcome to the shop. Tonight we're going to make a classy tissue box holder. I don't think I ever made one of these, but I've seen them around a lot, and I thought it'd be a perfect project because the bones of it are making your own plywood. We're going to make first some pieces of plywood. Now I have this cabinet out here because whenever I'm building a piece or you're making something special and you want to put a plywood back on it, you don't want to just slap any old birch plywood or something you buy. But this is just a 3mm piece of Baltic birch, so it was just white and nice quality plywood, but it wouldn't have worked inside this cabinet. This cabinet is entirely made of ash, various types of ash. In the back, I had this beautiful Japanese ash veneer that was super wide, so I could get that whole back in one cutting. So that is a piece of plywood that I made myself, and it doesn't take long at all with the right tools. Now look on the back, because it was going against the wall, I just used some material I had that would look pretty decent. And this is rift sawn white oak. So again, it's the exact same material. I don't think you can see it up in there, and this is a French cleat that we attach to the back, so this can just hang right on the wall really easily. So that's what we're going to do, is start out and make some plywood and then build our box. I'm going to set this aside. So to build this piece, I had to start with the essential tissue box. There's a standardized dimension here. Now, of course, you could modify what we're going to do tonight to fit those little square ones, but I'm going to go for the whole enchilada here, the large tissue box. And this would have been a great project a month and a half ago when I had the flu, right? I mean, we go right for it. But in order to get this made, I took the dimensions, and I know I want the interior of my box to fit right over and just come down just a little above the top of the box, which turns out to be 3.5 inches high, I believe. Yeah. And then we'll have to have a slot in the top of our box to access the ever-important tissues. I figured out that using the core material, well, that's what I was going to do, show you this. I made some earlier with some 1/8 inch masonite. This stuff, I believe it's available at the home stores. It's a little harder and a little heavier than this type of masonite. This is lighter, a little softer, and I think they both look like they're a full 1/8. The way to tell sometimes it's easiest if you stack a few layers together, and then you can measure, because if it's not quite an 1/8, it shows up as you stack the layers. You'll notice, it's not, it increases the difference as you stack them up. So this is measuring 1/4 inch, so that's good. So we don't need a super thick box to go over here, and altogether with the 4 sides and the top, it's going to be heavy enough. So the first ones I use, I made some a little earlier today just to make sure I knew what I was doing. And I used this material, and I ran out of this. So we're going to use this lighter but equally fine masonite. So you can use that. If you want to make yours thicker, you can use 1/4 inch plywood, whatever, but I would use a minimum of 1/8. All right, so I got my dimensions, figured out how high it was and all, and then I figured the exterior, the length and width of everything, of the outside dimension, so I would have clearance of the box. I could probably do this again some other way, but sorry, I got a lot of scribbles here. But this is the key thing. The box is going to be 3 3/4 high. This is the outside dimension. And so by the time I get my 2 layers of veneer on my substrate, my core 1/8 inch, I'm going to end up with like 3/16 of an inch thick. So this box is 3.5 inches high. So I'm going to have a good 1/16 of an inch clearance over the top. In fact, I'm going to have a good 1/16 all around with these other dimensions. So we've got 5 1/4 and then 9 3/8 in length. Now that's the exterior of our box, figuring the thickness of the material. So if you use thicker material, you're going to have to increase these dimensions. I'm assuming my finished thickness of my material is 3/16. Now I could have just glued a bunch of veneer down to a large sheet of 1/8 inch core and then sawed it up in the end. But I might end up with a seam where I don't want it. I can't know exactly how the figure of the wood is going to be. So I wanted to think a little more about the figure and the quality of how it looks. So I wanted to cut these and then lay them out. Rather than one big sheet, I just went ahead and cut the pieces that I need. With this piece, it's 20 inches long and it's 4 1/4 wide. So plenty width. I'm going to get both of my long sides out of this. I'll get my 2 ends out of this one, and I'll get the top out of this one. Now I also cut a corresponding 1/4 inch MDF. This will come in handy when we put it into the press. This is the caul, and this will give a nice even pressure in the vacuum press. All right, so we've got our cauls and everything sized the same. I just sized them all the same. It'll make it super easy to glue up. So that's all the material you need to make a box. So if you were going to make multiples, you could just have these cauls around, and then when it came time, you knew you'd have to just go ahead and size your material the same as your cauls, and you're good to go. And you have your measurements. You could even put your measurements on the cauls, and you'd know what your final measurements need to be. All right, so let's go ahead and cut up some veneer. I'm going to actually use the cauls to cut the veneer. Now, I thought I'd make a walnut box, and we'll make it using this. It's not the finest walnut. It's kind of got these wide, plain sawn streakiness in the middle. So I'm going to use where it has a little more character over here. There's a little curl going on down in this end, and it's a little richer. And I've got 2 layers. So I'm going to get the sides of the box out of here, and then the ends will come out of the next sheet. I think I'll have to go over to that. I'm going to avoid this little dark area down the bottom. And then I have this other piece that was pretty cool. It's got some curl in it. I don't know if you can see it. It's very close in figure to the other. This is going to be the top. So I've already cut that to the width, but we'll see what else we need here. So let's go ahead and get our sides. Now to get the sides, I'm just going to stack these together. I'm going to get rid of this sapwood on the side. So I'll get out my straight edge. And this is just a piece of MDF, nice and heavy. It's about 6 inches wide, jointed the edge nice and true, and that will give me a good straight edge. And it just by pressing down, I'll have it. I was excited to do this too because I got to use my freshly handled veneer saw. Check that out. I'm going to just strike a nice straight line here. I'm going to go through 2 layers. That's it. Now I know my sides are going to be the same as my caul material here. So I'm just going to use that as a guide to set the width here. That's it. Get that out of the way. And here we go. So these are about a 1/2 inch oversized, but that'll work out fine. I'll get rid of this. All right, now I'm just going to cut it to length. Same thing again, I'll just cut it to my caul. I just need one of these. Let's first of all pick out the area. Yeah, I like it down here. It's got a little more curl, a little more interesting. So let's hit it down here. Get just one of those. And I'm going to use my little scalpel for this. I could saw across, but when you're going across the grain, you can knife it easily too, and it's super easy. It's easier than sawing. But when I'm going with the grain, I definitely want to use the saw because the knife sometimes can track in the grain and get you off course. All right, there's one. And that's my two long sides. Now I need my ends. So I'll go ahead down to this end here and just go ahead and cut that. Super easy. By the way, if you want to feel like a surgeon when you work, you can pick up one of these scalpels. I've got a link to it on the notes. I almost called it the show notes. What do you call it?
Description in the video.
Yeah, on the video description below. You can check that out later. We'll also have links to some other things we show. All right, the last one I need is the top, and we'll use that funky thing. I'm going to use this end. I tried to straighten it out a little bit, the grain. And I'll just get it lined up here and go ahead. That's it. Now, for the inside, this is going to be the outside. Obviously, that's a nice looking top already, huh? Now, for the inside, I don't need to use nice walnut veneer. So I'm going to use a backer or a secondary lesser quality veneer. When you buy veneer, if you ask for backer veneer, or you probably will see it in the menu of veneer, it's a lower grade and they sell it for a fraction of what the higher quality is. I mean, sometimes you'll get it for 50 cents a foot. So here's a piece of backer cherry. And that's a nice piece of cherry, right? But this, I believe it was backer, maybe not. But it's got a lot of, like this dark streak in it. And this has some dark, but it's got this ropey curl too. So it's not all that bad. I'm going to just go ahead and get this piece out of here. Let's see, I better lay these out so I make sure I get enough. Yeah, that'll work out nicely. And then I'll get my other one up here. All right, so let me just cut this. Just knife it. All right, we got to spin it around so I can get the right angle. There, nice little square. Let's go ahead and get the long one while we're here. That sap's not going to matter. It's going to be on the inside, and most of it's going to be cut off, actually. So that's perfect right there. And let's right down the side. Nice. That's it. All right. Is that all of them? No, I got to do the ends. There we go. Perfect. Wow. It's almost like I planned it. Let's see. I can use that edge. And I'll use this edge, so I only have to make 2 cuts. cut a little bit, but that's okay. I know you're all jealous of my handles, huh? I mean, that thing just feels so good in my hand.
Sure, that's what's floating through their minds.
Ginsu master. All right, I'm going to set this down. I think we're good to go. Now, before we get the glue going, I like to get organized and figure out, so I don't want to waste time. We're going to roll glue, and we got to get it in the press. So I just want to get everything kind of organized here. All right, so see what I'm doing here? I'm just organizing everything. This is going to be the inside. That'll be my outside.
Can you talk about sharpening the saw?
Yeah, that will have to be another time. It's a little more involved. I would love to talk about it. You can probably find instructions for it too. But yeah, I'd be happy to show you because it's pretty easy, and it's really key to get a beautiful cut like that. Now we're not having any seams on this, so there's no issue, but you can get beautiful seams just off the saw because it cuts so cleanly with a good straight edge. All right, so we're going to go here. We've got our cawls, and then I even got a little pieces of paper to put under the cawls so that in case we get any glue squeezing through, we won't have any kind of sticking. All right, I'm going to bring out my roller. See now, this still has glue in it. All right, so I'm using Type 3. You could use yellow glue as well because this isn't super critical, but the Type 3 gives you a little more working time, so we'll just go quickly anyway because we don't want to waste time here. And just going to roll it out. Going to get it all over my hands again.
Dean says your bottle matches your bucket.
Nobody's going to bother me to put gloves on, right? Because this is a little bit, I am getting a little glue on my fingers, but that's okay. The things I do for you.
They're caring for you.
I didn't say bother me. Did I say bother me? Maybe that's what I really mean. No, they don't bother me. I like the friendly reminders. When I do something unsafe, I always get some comments about something. Please, you always must follow the manufacturer's instructions and practice. What was Norm's old line? Someone should type that. He used to have a thing he'd say at the beginning of every show on safety. That was the disclaimer. So no one would do anything dumb trying to be like Norm. But
yes, thank you all for your concerned comments. We appreciate it.
Yes, I'm not saying I don't appreciate them. I do. Well, I've answered all of you.
Here's a good question.
Oh, too much on that one.
The saw crazy lady does not have a veneer saw. Do you have any alternative cutting besides the scalpel? You'll see that mentioned. She just tuned in. She said. So.
What'd you say? The saw what?
The saw crazy. Oh, sorry. So crazy lady.
The saw crazy.
Not so, I'm sorry.
She saw crazy.
My poor sight.
If she saw crazy, she would have seen the saw.
So SEW crazy lady.
So crazy. Okay. All right.
Sorry, that's so silly.
Sorry about that.
My fault.
Anyhow.
Anyway, so there is a reference to a scalpel at the beginning that you'll see when you go back and watch.
And the veneer saw.
Any other options, Tom?
We have the veneer saw. You could use an X-Acto knife. You can use a Stanley, like a utility knife. You don't need the scalpel, but the scalpel brings your work to surgical level. No, it is fun to use. It's super sharp, and it's great for getting splinters out. No, I'm just kidding. I don't actually go after them like that.
So you're getting a lot of help here. It says, please read follow and understand all the manufacturer's instructions.
Yes. Thank you.
Or read, understand, and follow all directions that come with your tools. Both are super valid.
You do not operate heavy machinery under the influence of medication of all kinds. All right, so I'm going to put the backer on first. There we go. So you see how much I put on? It's a little pearly, but not, you don't want to see it dry, so there's plenty of glue on there. I'll just set that on there. I'll flip them. And we'll get the glue going on the other side. Now this is masonite. It's not really plywood. I mean, it's not super strong, but you know, to cover a tissue box, no one's going to know unless they look at the bottom of it. But it's nice to have something thin. It's inexpensive, and it's stable. You know, it's not going to explode or move a lot like regular wood. It's so small, there's no problem. See, that's a good amount right there. You know, I don't know if you noticed, but I had too much on that one, and the way I got it reduced was I just scraped some glue off the roller because the roller was heavy loaded and it couldn't take any of the glue off. But then when you go back over the piece, the roller reloads and it actually pulls glue off the surface so you can control it that way. Now these three worked out just right. This is the way you want it. All right, now we'll go ahead and get our top pieces on. All right, that's that. Now with these in position, I'm going to go ahead and pop a little piece of tape on there, keep it from sliding.
John said he just tried out the 6-inch rubber roller and liked the tactile feel of it laying down the glue. Have you ever tried that?
Oh, 6-inch? You mean a 6-inch wide rubber roller? I have not used the rubber roller, John. I have used adhesive rollers, which were good, but they didn't. I actually prefer just getting the regular paint rollers with a 3/8 inch snap because they hold a lot of glue, and I find I can move a little faster. But yeah, I've seen some of those factory type rollers that there's all kinds of cool gadgets. But that's when you're doing some serious glue up. But yeah, I have had large things glue up, and I'll just use a regular full-size roller, like with glue in a pan, you know. If you're doing a lot, sometimes I'll pour it right out of the bottle, but it's nice to have a roller in the pan, and you can control it pretty well that way. All right, so I taped those up. Now I'm just putting the piece of paper so the caul doesn't stick in case we get some squeeze through that open grain. And that just tightens everything up. I'll put one little piece of tape on that as well. Then you have a nice little sandwich that won't slip around. And we're going to get this into the manual press. You guys, some of you guys have seen this already, but I love this press. You can get a powered press, like a good vacuum, and they work great, but they're super expensive. You know, to get a large bag in that vacuum press, easily you can be right around $1,000. So this manual bag system, it's the Roar Rocket. The company started making skateboard decks, and it's just got this valve here where we're going to take the air out of the top. We're going to seal it here and manually remove the air. And this whole setup, it's like $75. So you can get into some really serious vacuum pressing for very little money. I'm going to set this like that.
Is
That
that
looks
wax
good.
paper that you were using?
No, it's just paper.
Just paper.
It's just some, what is it? It's called butcher paper. That I just get big rolls, and I use it for all kinds of stuff. All right, so that little mesh allows the air to evacuate. It has little air channels there, so it'll get pulled up through the valve. Now, before I can put the vacuum on, I've got to, oh shoot, I got to get this gasket off. Go slow. Oh, good. There we go. I'm almost ready to replace that gasket. I've used this bag a few times. But we do have the link to this as well. This is awesome, and you can easily find Raw Rocket. This is I think the 24 by 26 inch kit.
26 by 28.
What is it?
26 by 28?
Yeah, something like that. But it's the kit. Now, you can buy different size bags if you think you're going to do larger projects, but this setup right here is just the $75 one. But awesome. I mean, you get like this, you get the full atmospheric pressure. It's like 14 pounds per square inch. I think we did the math before on this round top that was, after we pulled the vacuum, you had the equivalent of 3,000 pounds of pressure on a little 18-inch diameter top. So that's how amazing this stuff is. Let me get that out quickly.
It's been noticed that you're using your new shop cart.
Oh yeah, check that out. I love these carts. I got all three of them going now. Now this is going to pull the last bit of air. It works like a reverse bicycle pump. Once I hear that clicking, that means you're all the way. Now, I have to make sure it's holding the vacuum because I've been using this gasket a few times. Yeah, see, I still got it. Beautiful. So there we've got the full pressure, 14 pounds per square inch. So there's probably a couple hundred pounds there. It's just really awesome. So we're going to get a beautiful custom plywood right there. That's enough to make one of the boxes. Now, as you would expect, I already have some parts made. These I've already cleaned up an edge. So these were the two ends that I cut apart. Something like that. Here's the top for this box. And this is the two sides, two long sides. So I'm going to mark the center of that. I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Oh, I got plenty of length there, so let's just go 10.5. Now the reason we veneer both sides is because if I only veneered this one side, you'd have all this moisture, and then with the wood, after it cures and dries, it would pull and warp this piece. So it stays relatively flat when you treat both sides with veneer. So whenever you're veneering something thin like this, you definitely need to go and hit both sides. All right, so here we go. I'm going to head over to the table saw. Now I'm going to get ready to cut these to size. Now I love this technique because it's really fast and it usually ends up coming out pretty good. We'll see about it, right? So what we're going to do for our box, like these will be the sides, like this, and we've got our end here. So what I'm going to do is miter all these corners. So we're going to have a long miter, and of course the bottom is going to be flat. So all our corners get mitered, and then the top will also get mitered into the top edge of all the sides. So it's going to drop right in. So all we need to do is make sure we cut this top exactly the same length as our sides, because when we have the miter, it's going to go right out to the point. And then we're going to cut the width exactly to the same length as the ends with the miter on there underneath, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is rip things to width, okay? To do this, we're going to lay our blade over to 45 degrees, and mine lays over to the left. So you always want to work on the other side of where it's leaning, so material doesn't get trapped in there. So I'm on the correct side of the blade for this. So I just go all the way till it stops. I can drop it down a little bit here. All right. Now I'm going to go to my dimensions. I need 3 3/4 width for all of my sides. So let me get these laid out here. If the grain is going a certain way, I want to make sure I rip these all the same so that it'll appear to wrap the box. You know, if I just didn't care about it, I might end up with a funky looking edge. All right, so I'm going to cut them all from the finer side. Okay, I'm going to make sure I've got the same side against the fence in each case. Now I want a 3 3/4 width, so I'm going to make a mark on here, and then I'll set my fence to there. Now this is the long point. I want 3 3/4. So I'll give myself a little bit. So I want to just miter to that point. Yeah, that looks better. All right, so I'm going to put on my eye protection, and I'm going to have this push block, the gripper. I don't have a link to this, but this is handy in cases like this to push something through. So here we go. I'm going to do the top to 5 1/4. I know. All right, that was easy. We've got now everything ripped to width. So this is 5 1/4 to the outside. We've got our bevels on both sides. Now we need to undercut bevel the ends here, and we need to bevel the ends of all of our base pieces. To do that, we're going to use a crosscut sled. It's a lot easier. So this sled I've used for quite a few things. You can see how large the cap is. I used it for datoing, and then for mitering, and now I've got it set with to miter. Now, for tonight, I actually tacked on a new base. So this is a fresh cut here, and then there's a fresh cut in the back. So that's actually right where our blade is cutting. So it's what you'd call a zero clearance setup. So let me see here. Yeah, that's good. So that's going to be really clean, and that saw cut is going right through there. And this is nice and square, so I can go ahead and cut my pieces. Now, I'm just going to cut one end first. Let me make sure how long I am here. All right, so everything is going to be 9 3/8 length this way. So, well, 10 3/4, plenty of length. And then these also going to be 9 3/8, so plenty of length all around. So I'm going to go ahead and hit those. Then I'll turn and I'll what I'm going to do is put a pencil mark using my rule. I'm telling you now because I'm going to have the power on. I'm going to just do this. And I'm going to mark 9 3/8 right there. Now here's the great thing. When you've tuned up your saw and you've got a zero clearance, I can take that piece and that line, I can put that line right to the curve. I know that's exactly where my saw is cutting. So there's no like checking it after. It will be dead on my line. And when I get it on the line, I'm going to set a stop at the other end. So I'll push all of them through at exactly the same stop. So that way I'll know everything will be exactly the same length. But first I have to start by squaring and cutting the bevel on one end, and then we'll go ahead and set the stop and be all set. Then the last thing we'll do is cut these to length, and I'll stop the saw just to briefly explain that. All right, let me get my stuff on again. I'm going to get out my stop material. Don't stop me now. All right, here we go. All right, so the last thing we have to do is cut our bevel on the ends, and we need this to be exactly the same length as our top is, right out point to point. So we don't have a lot to play with here, so I'm going to trim off this end. Make sure I got enough here. Yeah. So I'll trim off the end, then I'm going to use this piece. I'm going to set it on here, slide it over until it's right at the zero clearance, like here. Okay, see, that's perfectly there. And then I'm going to move up my stop block to just touch it here, and then I'll index my bevel side against the fence and cross-cut. And that way I'll know that I have exactly the same size, using, again, the zero clearance as our guide. All right, here we go. That's that. Come on back to the bench. I've got to cut a slot in the top. I don't know, I don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to actually cut the slot after. I tried it already, and I'll show you later. But I did a little measuring. It's kind of hard to measure tissue coming out, but I could tell that you need a good 4.5 inches, 4.5 long. And then I wasn't sure how wide. I was thinking, oh, I can go really thin. But then I realized you can't really go thin because I don't know if you've ever looked at the mechanism here. But when you pull a tissue and the next one comes out, it's kind of sticking out. And then it releases. So in order for that lip to not hit, you have to have an adequate enough slot in there. So I figured on a 1/2 inch wide should work. So we'll give it a try here in a minute. But anyway, so all I did was mark out, I found the center line, then I marked out each side of the center line 1/4 inch coming off the sides, and then I found the center and measured 2 1/4 each way to give me my 4.5 inch slot. I'll show you that in a second. But for now, we'll just imagine it's there. You really do want to cut it before you glue the box up. It'll be a little bit easier. But in the interest of time, I just want to show you the glue up method because it's kind of fun and it's super easy. So what I do is I'll bring a straight edge up onto the bench. I'll use the same straight edge. We'll clamp it down. And we're going to set our top aside. But right now we need our sides here. So what we're going to do is align our sides in a line, resting the bottom square edge against our straight edge. And we've got to have, let's see, oh, that's nice. That matched pretty nicely there. So that grain looks close. Slide that over. And then this one, that looks pretty good there. So these are pretty close to matching all the way around. So I've got the square edge on the bottom and my miter all the way across the top. What I want to do is tape these together. And for this I'm going to use green tape. So to start with, I'm just going to put a piece in the middle. I don't want to stretch this because this stuff does stretch. If I stretch it, it's going to want to pull the miter up over the top of the other one. So let me hit this here. All right, that's good. Everything's still aligned nicely. Now I'm going to stretch a long piece along the bottom like this. And then, holding it tight, one along the top. It's Scotch 233 plus. It's really strong. It's not your typical masking tape, and it stretches. So in this case, it works nicely. If you don't have it, you can use regular masking tape. This will just hold up a little better. So once I've got it all taped together, everything's smooth and tight. Now I'm going to flip it over, and I've got all my joints exposed. So what I want to do is just put a little streak of glue right on that miter. Just like that. That's all I need. And another one. And another one. I don't need to put it on both sides because it's going to squish over there. Not sure, you can put more, but that's pretty good. Then I'm going to put a little bit on the end. I'm going to put a thin coat there, and then a thin one on the other end too, just because, well, those are going to meet. All right, so now that we got it, now we're ready to assemble our box. This is what's fun. Because of the tape, you're just going to roll it right on up. And look at the miters fall beautifully into place. See, we get the squeeze out? Because the tape is holding them on the outside, and then it comes right on around, and you've got your box. Now we just need to tape the last corner. So, just want to make sure I'm lining that up right. Looks pretty good. I'll get one down the bottom. Now, once I've got it like this, here's my top miter looking right at me. And this should fit right in there. So what I'm going to do is just run a bead of glue right around this miter. We're going to get this thing all together.
Is there a reason you're choosing the green tape over the regular masking tape or blue tape?
Just for strength. The masking tape should work, but it's just on the sharp corners, and I stretched that a little to give me a pull. It's almost like a clamp. You get a little more stretchiness out of this stuff. Okay, so I've got all these miters. I've got just a little bead of glue. You don't need much. And now I'm going to hold it right by the edges, just by the edges, and drop it in. So we get it right in place. And just press it right in. Nice, huh? So you're getting a nice little squeeze out. Look at how that fits so sweet. Now we're going to go ahead and get a piece of tape at the end. Just pull it down nice and tight. Go ahead and get the other end.
Is that a special glue that you're using on this?
I've got Type Bond 3 in that little contact lens bottle, which dispenses a smaller bead. That's the only reason I'm using that. And I'll hit it here. So I'll get the end. I just like to get the end first. I know it's centered. It's nice. Just 3 pieces is nice. Now the side wants to bow out a little, so I have to pull that in. And I want to make sure that corner comes together really nicely. Like get it in the middle. Nice little squeeze out. And one here. See, I'm pulling this tape, and masking tape would tend to tear over that. That's a sharp corner. But this is just stronger, and I'm stretching it. See that? So this is nice tape for this. You can get it at automotive shops too. That's where I got this. But I've learned that you can also get it online, so check it out. Comes in handy for a lot of veneering. So I've got a little squeeze out on the inside there, and I would get that with a putty knife. I could let that, I think I'll let it gum up a little bit first, and then I'll get it out. But check it out. It's all there except for the opening. Now I'm going to show you one that I did earlier. And this one has the opening. So we'll get the tape off. Now, one thing you can do to dress it up a little bit more is put a little edge binding in there. You know, this looks so good actually on the corners. It's not bad actually. Those corners look really nice. So when you sand, if you want to try without edge binding, you can sand it.
Sanding's going to take away any residue of blue?
Well, no, but you see the edges? Boy, they're really tight. If you sand too hard and you break that, you could sand right through the veneer and see the dark line of the substrate. So you can also use something like a burnisher, and what I'm doing is I'm kind of crushing it a little bit. So I'm keeping my veneer, and now I'll just sand it a little bit so I don't lose the veneer. I'm not going to cut through it as easily if I just kind of roll the edge a little bit like that. And that looks sweet. Now I would sand it a little bit more than that. But here's the thing. You can upgrade, and like I said earlier, you can use all kinds of materials. You could use curly maple like this. I mean, that would be a sweet box too. That could be on the top. You could have sides of curly. Look at that. That would be sweet. So the possibilities are really endless. Now, I like using this Cuban mahogany, as some of you know, and the ribbon figure. And one of the things traditionally that was done a lot was having the grain run vertically. So one thing that you could upgrade this box with is, you notice that the grain is running really nicely on the sides. It looks like a great match, like it rolls right over. But on the end, it's at an angle. So you've got it running this way and then this way. And it's fine. But if you want to step your box up a little, if you ran the grain vertically, so you'd lay it out differently, you'd have to cut it and piece it. And then you had the grain running in like a sunburst, it would appear to flow over the sides. Now to show you what I'm talking about, I made one. So I made one out of Cuban mahogany earlier too. And this was fun because I got to just make a little sunburst on the top. Look at that veneer. I'm going to splash a little bit of denatured alcohol on this so you can see it. But my intention all along was to put a line in there. And I like putting like an ebony or black line on the binding as a corner bead. So there you have it. This is like a Furniture Master's version of a tissue box. I mean, this is my high style thing. But look at that. So all the grain is running vertically here. So everywhere the grain just kind of spills over the side. Let me get some denatured alcohol right here just to show you how this looks with finish on it. Now, one of the things I like to do is use a little rabbiting bit, and I like to put a 3/32 line in the corners, and that would really set it off too. So I'd have it running in this corner, and then across the end, down, and then all the way around the top. That's another look, but boy, those seams look so good. You know, if you put that in, then you wouldn't see that. I didn't fuss around to try to match all that. That would be wild to try to get a sunburst to match. But I'm going to just splash a little denatured on here so you can see.
Oh, goodness.
This is, look at that. That's how it's going to look with a finish on it. But isn't that sweet? So we've got a sunburst top, and it matches, it falls over the side all the way around. Let's see how the walnut looks. Now this needs a little more amber in the finish. So this would be nice to either put shellac or like the Waterlux, like an oil varnish that has a little amber in it. It'll warm it up a little bit more. This is kind of cold, so they say. So there, you have two versions of a classy tissue box holder. Oh, we got to try it. So when you got to put this on, you got to feed the tissue through there. All right. Get it started.
This box requires a fancy kind of tissue.
Now check that out. So then you dispense.
Wow.
Is that high style or what? All right. Well, I really love this project. It's simple, but it's really all about learning to make your own materials, your own composite materials or plywood with decorative veneers. And you see how super easy it is. With just a few fundamental tools, you can really do some exceptional work. Also, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit that little bell too so you know you get a reminder every time we post a new video. But thank you again for hanging out with me tonight. I really enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun, and we've got something useful. So I look forward to seeing you next time right back here in the shop for Shop Night Live.